So obviously we've brought you guys all here. You each represent a different piece of the television business right now. All four of you are now competing for, in several cases, the exact same project. And I'm curious, from where you sit, sort of the most frustrating part of that is what?
I'll say that for me, I really believe in the development process, and obviously I think Ted's organization has a different point of view, and I don't believe it's always necessary, but I believe it's often necessary, especially when you're trying to make things that have really original and distinctive tones. There's a process of working on a script and working on a pilot, sometimes actually retooling a pilot, that's, I think, valuable for precision of tone. And it's difficult to do that right now because any project that has merit, there's a, at minimum, it's seemingly a pilot commitment, often a series commitment. And I think for some series, I think that works well, but for others it doesn't. So it's just changed the development process somewhat. That would be my biggest frustration.
And I'm a fan of development. I just don't want to do it. I want people to bring it to a little more developed on their own. So.
Yeah, we have the ability to go at the right pace. It's one of the things I like about my job, and as opposed to when I was in the network business. And so I don't like artificial pressure to go faster, to make decisions before things are ready. And we take time to cast, and that's the biggest place is sort of waiting on the right actor, wooing over a long period of time. And one of the great pleasures of television is it moves a lot faster than movies, and I never want to get into the the slow bake of movie development. But I sort of agree with John that it's like you want to work things hard and make sure that they're ready when you put them on the air.
I enjoy, though, they're getting to appreciate my misery.
Because you've done you've done two straight to series orders already this season.
Yeah, it's my least favorite part of the job, and always has been. And we've been bound to these cycles for a long time in the broadcast side of the business. When I worked in cable, I loved getting off of it. I didn't miss it. It was a much better process creatively all the way around. It has a higher yield on the success side. Most artists will not listen. You give anything too much time, we're just going to be wasted. But you want to have the ability to change the course, correct if need be, cast not under duress, and it is an advantage in their system that we've not had. I'm trying to unwind, and my series orders have been predominantly to unwind us off the cycle in broadcast. But the marketplace is at such a fever pitch. We've always had to participate in this derby, and I can't stand it. I mean, it gets absurd. It's like, first of all, I get dragged into meetings that I shouldn't be in, pitch meetings, because, Nina was there and she blew air kisses, Paul sent flowers, Bob's vacuuming their rugs. I mean, it's insane. I mean, it gets that silly. But then people start throwing money at things, and there's nothing else to do. It's a marketplace. The marketplace will dictate what it's supposed to do. I mean, Ted's operating under a different system. In cable, I mean, premium cable's dipped in that, but even premium cable was a pretty sober buying environment. And when, in basic cable would really say, listen, this is the price of entry. We're on an equal playing field. We'll back your series. We're going to market it aggressively with tens of millions of dollars. But, we're not going to play into this series order thing. And it starts to pervert the process, really upstream, I think, when there's too much money involved too early and everyone makes false promises that they can't deliver.
How much of that is directly
Well,
Netflix?
no, it's not. I think all of us would agree. We're not. None of us are implicating Netflix in that, because the truth of the matter is there are now 48 channels at last count making scripted original series.
Yeah.
So it's the whole ecosystem that's creating it. Netflix is a part of it, but so are we.
We do find ourselves, just sensibility-wise, tend to be at the table a lot lately for some reason.
And I do think that people, get wrapped up in the cost of a show and say, we pay a lot for a show relative to what someone else would pay. But given that I don't have the infrastructure overhead, the development infrastructure overhead, and that I'm not running 50, 60 pilots to do it. Right. If you took all that money out and put it and put it on the screen, which is what we did with House of Cards and what we've done with our shows, then we're probably not running that far different.
Well, you're amortizing your shows in a really different way than we are, because I don't know how David amortizes his, but I know that we have an ad sales business, and a good chunk of our money is made up front. So we have to amortize a good chunk of the cost of our shows early in the process.
Yeah.
I think
we're
premium
in the
inscription
middle.
services are able to spread those costs out, so that changes the economic
And the more-
structure.
This
in
gets
that.
very arcane, but how you amortize your shows is like how you pay for them on the balance sheet. We do it over a longer period than advertiser supported. These guys probably do it even longer.
So take $100 million, just take $100 million and spend. If you have to amortize or accrual accounting, if you have to account for 70 or 80% of the 100 million in the first year you air it, then that's a $70 to $80 million cost. If you straight line amortize it over 5 years, as an example, that's $20 million a year. So it's a really, really big difference. And without knowing the specific amortization policies of their organizations, I just know that they're longer.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
Let's talk more accounting. I think it makes for fun.
But how much?
Nothing's more fun in the Hollywood Reporter than the accounting issue.
But I'm curious how much of that with House of Cards was you planting your flag versus this is the price you sort of have to pay going forward to sort of be in this business, or is this a long-term plan
The
for
price
you?
to pay wasn't the price per episode. The price to pay
Sure.
was the big order.
But but was it designed to sort of make a splash and say we're here, or is that a long-term plan? This is how you're going to be competitive. I'm going to spend more.
The size of we've not replicated the size of the order. So we've gone straight to season with everything, like I said, because we don't have a pilot system or the development team to do those things. So the difference that I have from everybody else here probably is that we can soft land with a single or a double and be just fine. The business is just fine. We don't have any opportunity costs of the 8 p.m. time slot that we have to worry about. It's an incredible, luxurious environment, to find an audience and give it time to breathe and be successful. And that's why these shows have worked. I mean, if they had to work in the moment, we would probably have the same success record.
He'd be here talking about the cast contingent presentations he's ordering next season. But it is a good environment for artists to work in, and in that knowing that there's a wide range.
It's an interesting thing because if in the case of House of Cards where they had 26 episodes going in, when they opened the writers' room, they knew there was going to be a 26th hour, and they wrote accordingly. So the first episode is a different episode than it would be if you're writing for your life, and you're trying to figure out if you're going to get halfway through the season, and you're going to try to tell the whole story in 6 hours when you have 40 hours in your head. So I think we gave the writers a different creative playground to work in, and the show's better because of it. I'm sure of that.
But Ted didn't answer it this way, but I would be presumptuous enough to say that we're all in that business of pushing chips into the middle of the table. And I know these guys' stories, and I know my own stories where you've pushed chips in and made a big bet and stuck your neck out, and it better work. It doesn't mean it's your job, but you got a lot of explaining to do and a lot of backpedaling if it doesn't. And that's what we're paid to do. And
It was our entry.
Sons of Anarchy, Homeland,
And it was our entry. I mean, at some point I said, look, this is a massive bet, and if it doesn't work, it will be a super expensive license, but we won't be in the original business.
Right.
But if it works, we'll be in the original business.
Yeah.
So that was the bet.
Yeah.
What's the craziest thing you've done to land a show?
You mean on in the market to buy it?
In a competitive environment.
Generally, I don't know. I don't feel like I've ever been forced to do anything I didn't want to do.
Or a star, for that matter.
For a star, it's a long sustained seduction. That's how it works. And there's a process when you're landing a star who's doesn't know how to think about television, and television's really different for actors than you're signing on to 60 pages of what ultimately may be 600 pages. Over time it's going to be 5,000 pages. So,
But more importantly, you're making a 6-year, maybe plus decision when you sign that contract.
But I've watched a lot of feature actors who either feature actors or stage actors make that transition. They do not have a fixed text, and the actors are used to dealing with fixed text and planning their movement from the beginning to end and the arc of their characters. And signing on to the unknown can be very scary to a major actor. And so a lot of what happens is sort of trying to talk to actors, and sort of from inside the creative process, how the great thing about television is that back and forth between writer and actor. An actor has more authorship actually than they do in movies or on stage. And it's about making that shift in their head, and I watch it happen.
And they love it, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been through this with a whole bunch of actors, as David has, I'm sure, but two notable ones were Glenn Close and Jessica Lange. Glenn had done television before, but never signed on to a long-term series. And after she did a single series on the season on The Shield, she came back and said, "Well, if you develop me a show, I'll do a long-term series." And both of them had that exact experience, which is they were used to a formal process of planning their performance from beginning to end. And they were very nervous about it. Ultimately, both of them came back to me later on and said, "This is incredibly freeing and exciting because it's just like life. I don't know what's going to happen yet next. I'm getting the pages, and more than that, I don't have so much time to prepare that I have to trust my imagination and my craft to show up on the day and be spontaneous, which takes them back to acting class and the things that got them excited about the craft in the first place." So it's I've seen them actually rejuvenated in some ways in their craft.
It tends to be incredibly exciting for actors, and when they start finally, I watched Liev go through this from like, what am I doing? I don't understand the end. Why do I hate my father so much? To that moment where he finally clicked in, and it's going to get answered. And there's certain things that are in his performance that then get responded to by the writers, and there's this sort of nonverbal communication that goes on between actor and writer. What choices an actor makes then get reflected back in subsequent scripts in terms of answering it.
Sure.
I like how you took a really commercial question and turned it into a really artistic answer. That's Showtime. It's just so artist friendly. We just lie and whore ourselves out. Whatever the fuck we can close with, we will.
What's the show that got away for each of you?
Oh, it's easy for me.
Yeah, I know.
It's Breaking Bad. Yeah.
I was given the script of Homeland by Howard before because of our relationship with 24, and I read it and thought it was really good, but it felt like a cable show, and I still wrestle with it. I don't know. It would not be our highest rated show, but I really wish I had it. I mean, that's the most recent one.
We haven't been at it long enough to know if any of them got away that we're not happy about yet, so we'll find out.
I'm honestly not trying to dodge, but nothing pops to mind. Come back to me in 5 minutes. I'll give you an answer.
Talk more about the artist and the decision process.
I'll tell you, I think True Detective on HBO is a show that I would have loved to have closed right out of the bat.
Were you in that bidding process?
Yeah, for a second. It was just, it came in and went very fast, but it's one of the best written projects I've seen.
And why did they go to HBO?
I think it was going there no matter what.
They had a script.
Shitload of money.
Oh yes.
No, I actually thought it was coming. Actually thought I was going to get it, and at the end they offered a big check and an overall deal for the writer, separate from the project.
Was it a spec?
Yeah.
A spec that had 2 actors and a director attached.
Yeah, it was a great project.
Who is a big star on Netflix in terms of from other shows that you guys license that's not yet on a show there, but you?
I can't tell you that.
Proprietary information.
I mean, we use that in
2 words.
We definitely use it.
Obviously this has been written about a lot, but the frustrations that the other networks have with Netflix and what they've released and what they haven't released in terms of numbers. I mean, what is your?
We really just like to give Ted shit about it.
Yeah,
it's really.
This is like Ted Sarandos roast, right? Where's Jeff Ross?
But it does beg the question. I mean, how long can you do that? How long can you go without giving any information about how these shows are doing?
Not just to us, but also to people whose shows you're licensing.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think when we, at some point, someone will just spend a ton of money getting the answer, because you can, right? Somebody could spend a sample 2,000 people meaningfully and spend $1 million and get the data. It's a question of how valuable the answer is to you guys. It's not to me. So.
John puts in $10. I put in $10. we get the food channel to put in $10. We could put together a pool.
And like I said, I know it's a curiosity, and I know like from the talent perspective. But what I found interesting was none of them found don't think that the Nielsen data is so accurate that they wanted to make sure that they were in the pool. So for me, it's like I think it's a great. Orange is the New Black.
Here's the question: would we understand it if you gave it to us?
I don't think so.
That's the thing.
Because what you publish and what I know, the data that's relevant to me versus what Nielsen publishes, is watching the show for a few minutes the same as watching 13 hours of it in 6 days? Is that actually? Would you measure that with the same value? I wouldn't. It's much more valuable for me the people who watch all 13 hours.
Yeah,
and if they watch it fast.
Well, by the way, we look at that. We look
slow.
at that data too, because we're both in the ad sales business and the subscription business essentially.
Right.
So, when you get a rating for any of our services, it's an average view. So if you could have an hour of Sons of Anarchy that was actually watched by 6 people added together, right? On the one hand, it's very honest data in the sense you have to watch a whole hour to be credited, including the commercials. So, for example, if you took the commercials out of Sons of Anarchy last year, it outrated True Blood. But if you put the commercials in, it was below True Blood because we were getting measured on who did and didn't watch the commercials. But we also look at who watches multiple episodes or all the episodes of our shows, because when you're really trying to calculate the value of a show in terms of subscription value, as TED is, 6 minutes of somebody watching a show does not make a subscriber, for your show or our show. You have to have somebody who's really passionately committed to it.
But depending on the headline, that's which number gets reported is very convoluted. So I think I've said that my ratings are apples and oranges compared to these, and maybe what you have to look at for me, the way you talked about our amortization, you look at it and say, well, what is the live plus 12 months? Because that's maybe what's a relevant data point.
Right.
To look
we
at.
don't even, go for that, but that's as good for us as, I don't care if you watched Homeland, you binged Homeland season 2 right before season 3. I mean, we had huge watching of Homeland season 1 all through the airing of season 2, and it's happening again right now. If you look at, Homeland's viewership has gone, as we start getting near the new season, people want to catch up. So, but none of that ever gets reported. So we give you a number, we say 5.7 million people are watching Ray Donovan every week. That's an arbitrary, that's a 7-day number. That's people who watch it within 7 days. But as Ted's saying, I don't care. A lot of people are still watching Ray Donovan, and it just ended, and people are talking about it, so they're catching up. But it doesn't get reported.
You mentioned Breaking Bad. I mean, the night of the Emmy win, the most watched episode of Breaking Bad on Netflix was the pilot.
How often is that true? Because I do that all the time. I watch the pilot of shows that I like on Netflix.
Yeah, frequently.
Pilots are really popular?
Until very recently, the most watched episode of Mad Men on Netflix was the first episode. So there's a tipping point where, now the audience is kind of catching up. So at some point, I'd say right today, as of last night, more people.
Well, more
the
people
total
last
audience
night
for
watched
Breaking
another,
Bad is growing.
But still,
But then just
the
watch the pilot,
cumulative
they just
views
jumped in.
is still number one is number one. The first episode.
Oh, the cumulative views, you can't catch up. Yeah, but this is just the exact in just that last 24 hours. More people are coming into the show than coming out of the show, watching the most recent episode.
It's gotten super complicated and kind of boring.
Yeah, but look, I would not. I would not.
Let's go back to the shape of the table.
Yeah, I would just add that I don't. It's not really relevant to me. I don't, other than the envy part of it, because I love my job, but I would really love my job if I didn't have to live by and die by ratings every day. But we're in a business where perception becomes reality, and that has to do with the advertising, where we make our living, and advertisers can wake up and they're watching Netflix and saying, God, Orange is the New Black. Everyone's watching that. And then you get these sweeping generalizations, and I hear it back through our sales department sometimes, or media buyers. Certainly the talent are prey to that. Well, wait a minute, those are all the big hits. And say, well, I don't. So we really have to try to get some uniform metric where you'd say, well, let's put it in perspective, because the word hit, there can be a creatively successful enterprise and something that could stay, work for them, but where's a hit in this universe?
That's the only place where I go.
And if we get a couple of blocks out of this neighborhood, what are people talking about?
Right.
And there's no doubt that Orange is the New Black. I mean, I don't think anyone would question the hitness of it, given that it is what everyone's talking about. Everywhere you go, that's the show that everyone's telling you got to watch. So yes, there's a very specific.
No. I would question that, because that's anecdotal data. We're talking about the difference between anecdotal data.
I'm not saying
and
me. I'm
hard,
just saying
and hard data.
Okay.
Well, everyone may be talking about Orange is the New Black in Hollywood, but
no,
what Kevin's saying is,
I said when you get out of this neighborhood, get out of here. Yeah.
I mean, we just don't look. There's no question in my mind that's a very successful show. You can just feel it. You can feel that people like it and that it's an excellent show. It got really terrific reviews. But I think where it gets complicated is we have no clue as the scale of it in overall terms relative to the scale of Ray Donovan or the scale of New Girl or anything like that. And so what Kevin's saying is the only thing that does get confusing is that perception is often reality, and we don't know the difference between perception and reality. We know that you make really good shows, and we know that some people are watching them because we can hear the buzz around them, but we just don't know in relative terms and outside of the Beltway or Hollywood.
And those inform business decisions where representatives are trying to steer a talent as that talent's trying to get information. So what is that? Is that a hit? What's the potential upside of that? I mean.
Well, they want us to get renewed. They want to know if they're going to work next year.
First and foremost, yes, they want to, and that is a good environment.
And then secondarily, what they can make in the long run.
And the potential, and the other thing, the potential negative of me jumping into the fray, into the horse race, is that I buy programming from all these guys. So I don't think that it's that beneficial for me to say, to have, and we can go out there and prove it, or I can say it anecdotally, whatever you want, that if a show on Netflix is being watched more than a show on FX, that's bad for FX and not particularly great for Netflix. So that's a narrative that I don't think is good, and I want your shows to be successful, because I can buy more of your shows. So that's to me, it's like that. The story that everyone wants to write is either no one's watching these shows or everyone's watching these shows, and nothing and the truth is really not that relevant.
Well, but it's also a question of who benefits when people watch the shows, and this is what came up with this whole who's owning the binge watchers. And you guys both have thoughts on this, on the value of shows when they're put on video demand before they go on Netflix, and when they are on Amazon before they go to cable, that kind of thing. I mean, how much do you guys think about that, and what is the biggest issue in that space in terms of what you guys stress about?
It's all we think about. But most of our business is off-net buying, and we're constantly struggling with the windows of syndication, and the frustrations of kind of the status quo. So I think nothing probably has been better for the golden age of television than season after syndication on Netflix. Not just Netflix, but they're continuing to grow, and kind of the ability to watch content after its initial air date. So like I said, the wrestle part is that there's two different practices that go on. One of them is catch-up TV, which is incredibly sophisticated in places in the UK and underdeveloped here, meaning that there's an expectation that you're going to have, exactly how much of the show you can watch when. So 5 episodes of catch-up television is great for the industry. It's great for getting people engaged with a show, and takes all the pressure off of the time slot, a lot of those things. But when you stack the whole season of a show, that's SVOD, and I pay a fortune for SVOD rights. So if a network wants to give it away to a cable operator, they have to forego the fortune I pay for it. So we just lower the price tag dramatically if we allow full season stacking, because it's a whole different.
For what
behavior.
it's worth, I just and Ted's got the right to determine what's value for his business, but I just strongly disagree with that. What Kevin and I are finding essentially is that the amount of advertising watched in linear platforms is going down radically, and we're making massive investments in these shows in terms of advertising and licensing and big bits, putting our chips on the table, and we really need to be able to put more shows besides 5 in these bins in season. Again, I think SVOD is an after season. I think basically it's a year afterwards, or in some cases maybe before. Right, it's a commercial-free after back-end environment. I don't think the front-end environment has anything to do with SVOD. And frankly, what I look at is all we're trying to do is claw back some of the usage we're losing. We're not going to have more usage by putting things behind the system. So I don't think it's fair to discount essentially the price, because I don't think we're encroaching into the SVOD window. In fact, whereas David has at Showtime Anytime and doesn't sell the SVOD typically, we do intend to still sell the SVOD. So in essence, we've already declared a truce in the sense that we intend to coexist with Netflix and its SVOD competitors. We intend to but we make serialized shows, and ultimately I don't think it's fair at all that we make a show that has a 13-episode serialized structure and we can't offer the ability to watch that in season with ads and I don't think we should be paying more money for that. I think essentially we're just trying to claw back some
We should set the table about that, though.
losing.
Just back up for a second, if I can, just to go back to where then the business was constructed. Then it was constructed around the network business, and then we somewhat all conformed to it, where on our air, in a commercial environment, we would get multiple plays. We'd have the original, but we certainly wouldn't be in profit until we took at least 1 repeat. Often you would take 2 or maybe even 3 on certain shows. Then the window before it ever hit any sort of syndication, back in the old days, would be 5 years, 4 years. And that window was moved up, and a big debate, and I remember it very well at the time when the syndication window moved into our while the show was still on the air. It's going to kill, it's going to be the death. Well, it ended up amazingly being a boost to shows, and we found The Big Bang being the latest one. I certainly remember one of the early ones, Law and Order, which did not become a hit until its 5th year. It was sort of a middling performer. And so that was everybody's theories proved a little bit wrong. But that window has cinched up. There's no question that the vitality of the SVOD market, as led by Netflix, has been a very, very important entree into the contemporary economics and the contemporary viewing. It's created a great viewing pattern, and it has been a good creative part of the puzzle. But as it encroaches into our window, where we now quite often take one run of our shows, it's a little different in basic where they can repeat things. We're paying a lot of money for one run with the marketing on top before that is out of our universe and could within 18 months appear on Netflix in an unbranded environment in an a la carte universe where people are watching the less bound to a linear channel. They need to be able to somewhat stay tethered to our universe, or that entire thing can unravel very quickly. None of it's bad for television. Television viewing is up. People like that. But what Ted alluded to is in Europe, it's a friction-free environment to say, I like this show. Oh, I like it. Oh, I missed an episode there. I can get it. I can start from the first one and I can watch it. It's very cohesive. What John and I are really trying to do is not only capture value, but to create a consumer experience that makes sense. It's very rolling. What is rolling 5? I have people who work in our industry every day who say to me, I really want to see that. Where is it? Could you send me DVDs? I don't know how to see it. So people that do this for a living, like what does your average person do? A rolling 5?
Right.
So what happens is they come in, I heard that Sleepy Hollow is great. Well, what, episode 4? I'm out. I'm going to wait till I see it on Netflix. That's not good for Fox.
Okay. Can I just answer for us?
Please.
Because
David's different.
It's a different model, and I think it's actually simpler, which is we're not trying to sell ads, but we need the attribution of Homeland and Ray Donovan to Showtime. We're a subscription service, like he's a subscription service, and I don't want them to start thinking. A lot of people think Breaking Bad is on Netflix, and I don't want them to start thinking thinking that Homeland is on anything other. You want Homeland, you got to get to Showtime. We actually had. I remember I was in a meeting and somebody very senior in the stations business at CBS said. I remember during year 1 of Homeland said, this Homeland show, I hear it's really good. A lot of people really want to see it. And like, where can we get it? Like, you get it on Showtime. Yeah. They're like, yeah, but I don't get Showtime. So like, where can I get it? You should make it available. People really want to see that. Like, and
that
I was
is
like,
the consumer expectation.
And this is somebody who's a senior stations person in the CBS Corporation. And that's, so for us, it's a fairly simple, we put shows after, Tudors and
Californication
California,
starting up.
yeah, Californication when it goes off our air is going to be on their air. So we like them too, but it's important for us to maintain. We need attribution, and we're doing much better. By the way, it used to be where's Dexter? I think that's on HBO, and it's the increase of our brand.
I want to jump in on that because look, I think there are at the moment, with due respect to the great programming that Kevin and other broadcast networks make, I think there are a number of premium cable services. Showtime and HBO are obviously premium cable, but so are AMC and FX, notwithstanding they're on basic cable, and so is Netflix. We're all competing for the same sort of brand awareness and identity. But as David said, his shows are attributed to Showtime indefinitely. So are Ted's to Netflix. We have a significant problem, which is that if our syndication window gets moved up from 4 to 1 year, essentially, and as a show is just developing and new and people don't even know about it and word is still spreading, after a year it's on Netflix, we're worried that we won't have a brand attribution. So there really only are a couple of issues that we have with Netflix, to tell you the truth. It's an extremely valuable component to the larger ecosystem. One is this stacking issue and the need to sort of recapture some of our advertising revenue, and the other is branding, because if you look at one of your ads, it says Orange is the New Black's a Netflix original series, House of Cards Netflix original series, and then it says New Girl Breaking Bad and Sons of Anarchy, and there's no branding on that. And arguably at some point in the life of the series there probably should be, just as there's no branding on 2.5 Men when it comes to FX. But after a year, when we're still trying to drive people back to the linear channel, and essentially we're putting so much money into building a brand, we need an association between the shows and our brand. And so, look, these are growing pains in terms of trying to figure out where Netflix fits in the ecosystem, but my issues with them have to do with my need to build a front-end business that's healthy and robust, and my need to have a branding association between our hit shows and our... That said, I want to sell my shows to Netflix, and Netflix provides an ad. Yeah, we have to, but it provides value in the system.
I mean, and the thing that's hard to monetize or hard to quantify is the de-risking of the business a bit. By what's different, but when you're talking about where if you didn't get to the fourth season and you lose money,
it's all a write-off.
Now today, with Netflix sold into it and foreign territories pre-sold, it's likely that you're rolling in profits. Mm-hmm. So that's a new dynamic in television too that I think has been really helpful.
Let's pick on somebody else for a second.
Yeah.
You'll have to order lunch if you don't.
NBC.
Yeah.
Is obviously, many of you guys have worked there at points in your career.
At least three of us.
It's exactly.
No, I've watched it.
You're the one. They are the sort of industry punching bag in a lot of ways. If you come in, if one of you or all of you were to come in, and what would you do? How would you fix it? It's the first move you make.
Well, I actually was given that opportunity.
Did you put air quotes around the word opportunity?
I'll let one of you guys answer that.
You were given the gift?
I was given the gift. It was really a breezy 4 years.
I have a lot of respect for Bob Greenblatt. I'm not going to tell you how he should do his job. I think he's pretty good at it.
When you're in a down cycle, it's an extraordinary thing. I mean, I had an incredible learning experience at that time. The downward momentum, the toll it takes, again, getting back to perception being a reality in the community. Any mistake you make is amplified and stitched together in some sort of narrative about, look, that's why when you're on a roll of something, they're doing all the great shows. They've got everything watched. No one's watching over there. And it takes its toll on your people and your culture. And people start to get beaten down and they get paranoid. And, look, any organization is a delicate balance. And particularly if there's politics and things are not managed well from above. And they've had a lot of cultural changes over there, mergers. I mean, I think Comcast is now beginning to really infuse more of their culture. But those are difficult integrations and transitions to live through. And, when your people start to get spooked and paranoid, and it's not a lot of fun coming to work every day, and you wake up at 5 in the morning and you look at your ratings and you're not getting a lot of mojo to go in.
I feel like NBC might be at the far edge of the future of TV broadcast right now, which is they live and die on linear. Yeah. They sports and The Voice and those type of shows, and if we're on the opposite extreme of that, right, we're 100% on demand. So I think that as the linearness of NBC it becomes more and more intense. I think that's the right direction to take.
But it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine in that, to talk about the business end of it, which is the linear channel right now. I mean, to a large degree, it's a store. It's a retail store of just getting traffic in the front door, and the circulation has been our biggest asset. People will come. Right. So they have football and they have a few things that bring in, but what happens is when nobody's cycling through, they're not learning about, you're getting, passive viewing is really becoming a thing of the past, which was really the brick and mortar of network television. The lead-in effect of sandwiching something in between something else. That's virtually gone with DVR viewing. So they're not watching your promos. There's really no hammock effect. Your circulation's down. It's just very, very difficult to move the needle. With that said, you know what? You wake up and then there's something there, and the margins are. You can already see them, making incremental progress. So.
Well, and to put it in some perspective, if you look at the broadcast networks, they all aggregate, just in adults 18 to 49, which is the key ad demo, they average maybe 2.5 to 3 million adults 18 to 49 in every hour of prime across an entire 52 weeks, inclusive of repeats in the summer. And the number one basic cable network is going to do about 1 million. So from a scale standpoint, not only do they have big events and really high highs, but they're still way bigger than the largest basic cable networks.
But we can't afford to leech. That's why this is such an emotional and important business issue of just trying to recapture our viewers. The viewers on other platforms are not lesser viewers, and we're talking a lot about that, not only from a measurement perspective, but those are viewers watching our shows. whether they got on board episode 1 or episode 36, they've decided they want to watch that show, and you have to capture them. We're no longer in an environment where we could say, oh, you know what? We lose 5 million here, 6 million there. It's no big deal. We want and need those viewers.
Yeah, look, I was quoted in a way that, and I talked to Reed and Ted, over the weekend at the Emmys, and I think what they thought I was saying, or what the reporter thought I was saying, was that, the system will never change; it'll be there forever. What I was really saying is, look, it's an ecosystem. Netflix is a new and incredibly important and valuable part of that ecosystem. I mean, genuinely mean that. It has, as Ted said, really added something to the system and added something to the economics of the shows that we make. But if you look at this, the MVPD system, basically you got $32 billion in advertising revenue. I'm just talking about broadcast and basic cable. And not sports and not news. I'm just talking about entertainment. $32 billion in advertising revenue, $24 billion in subscription revenue, and that's inclusive of the premium channels now. So I'm throwing them in. $56 billion, $24 billion spent on programming. Okay. Now, $2 billion is a really important, and it's the icing on the cake. It really has changed the dynamic in a really positive way. But the reality is that $24 billion is the core of what this town thrives on. And so the point is that the whole of the ecosystem needs to maintain its health. The broadcast networks are necessary to that health. The basic cable networks are necessary. The premium cable networks and Netflix is necessary. You are because you drive the MVPD system. Right. Honestly, the fact that Showtime and HBO's content is behind that paywall is a part of what sustains that system and keeps people buying into it.
Yeah,
so
where that story gets misconstrued, I think, is we're not saying that we're not trying to compare Netflix to the entire television ecosystem. We're not meant to substitute anything. Right. Every month when I pay for my cable bill, I could have paid for 2.5 years of Netflix. So we're not trying to supplant cable in any stretch. We're, like you said, we're a $2 billion component of the programming piece today.
So how much will what you just said, the whole ecosystem, be different in 5 years, and how?
Look, I don't really know. I mean, if it doesn't hang together, like people talk a lot about a la carte, and the problem with a la carte is, for a national advertiser, Procter & Gamble, an auto manufacturer, they need a network in a minimum of 70 million homes, right, to have an efficient national buy. If you went a la carte, you'd have 5 networks in 70 million homes. Right now, you have 70 networks in 70 million homes. So that $32 billion, boom, most of it would be out of the system instantaneously. And so most of the investment in programming would go away. So it's an incredibly vibrant system. Every component of it is a really vibrant system. And I think the hope is, that it will hold together. All of the components of the system will hold together, because that's what's creating the so-called golden age of television, is just the enormous ability to create great programming in multiple different settings and to invest, a massive amount of money in programming. That said, we are aware that the advertising component of it, which again is 32 versus 24 billion in the MVPD system, it's the largest component of the system, is really, really struggling with the delinearization, that's quite a word, mouthful, of networks. And so we're trying to rebuild essentially a nonlinear advertising
which they need, which was wired into our national economy. I mean, they really can't replicate that anywhere else. I mean, it's not as though, well, we'll just move there's nowhere else to move that money to get the ROI.
But that's what I was talking about NBC about. Instead of delinearizing, they should be doubling down on what they do really well. And they've got a couple of slots that they do incredibly well, better than anybody else. And that's what I think that.
But we make serialized dramas, and he makes serialized dramas. So how do you delinearize serialized dramas? I mean, that works with sports or other or event programming.
You just do what everyone else does on cable. You specialize.
If you do it in sports, you're just passing it through to the leagues. Yeah.
I'm curious on the drama side of things. I mean, that's a topic that's come up, particularly this development season. There's a drama crisis, if you will. There's not as much content. What does that mean for you? And B, what is a broadcast drama going to look like going forward?
Well, really it means is that because of the amount of services now programming original drama, and the fact that there's a lot of really good shows going up, and some that can survive on a more niche basis, talent is very well served right now in the marketplace. There's a lot of buyers for a lot of different things, and there's a desire, and we are feeling right now a real demand outstripping supply on the drama side at this moment in time. Well, some of it I think will seek its own level as things, right now it's at a fever pitch. I don't know that that's going to go down. We're going to have to continue to compete for it, and
they can probably get by developing fewer projects. That would be my prescription. Well, you can still put 4 new shows on the air, developing 30 projects rather than developing.
Well, let me say this.
90
That's
projects.
actually, I think, a very good point. I don't like the welfare state of the development process.
Right.
A lot of this town was sustained by the pilot system, where we were making an enormous and inefficient amount of product. And that's just the way it went. It never made a lot of sense. But frankly, it wasn't bad for people because they may not have a series, but in the meantime, they're paying their bills with a pilot.
Absolutely.
And an agent said, you know what, my guy's working. He's got a pilot over. He's got 2 pilots. But it's a silly system. And so maybe one of the healthier things that could evolve as there's more series opportunities, I'm certainly trying to do it, is to get off of that inefficient, just throwing spaghetti at the wall. But you have to unwind the system in our business that's been ingrained for 40 years. We're almost there.
One of the great pleasures of my job is that
You've always hated that too. That's silly.
it's ridiculous. And I develop fewer projects. I have a shorter development slate. And when I make a pilot, you're probably going on the air unless something screws up. And in the 5 years in the 3 years I've been there, I've made 5, or one of them I haven't. So the one I walked into, basically 6 pilots, and they've all gone on the air. And so that's as efficient a system.
You essentially do the same thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been there 10 years. I think we've gone 12 for 15 in terms of pilots.
That's as
going
efficient as
series.
Ted. He makes a bigger swing at the beginning. But at the end of the day, I make the same 26 episodes as he does. You get your pilot made, it's probably going on the air, and we don't cancel after year 1. And the networks will probably...
Now we're at a bigger volume, which is, I've got upwards of 37 series in motion right now in some form or another. It's just, I can't, it's just that construction was built at a different era. It's very difficult to unwire the town. I mean, even agents are still in this mode of, pilot season. What the hell is pilot season? It's an artificial boundary that makes no sense, and it makes you cast under duress and do things under duress that you shouldn't have to do.
So in 5 years, will Fox make half as many pilots?
I'm going to make half as many pilots this year, not just as pilots. Now, we're going to make prototypes. We all believe in those. I mean, Ted's not doing that, but he'll get there.
The idea of having a couple things percolating, I think is obviously smart. So.
Yeah, but you want to. But these guys have a little bit more maneuverability on when they can roll that series out. Nobody has to get to the upfront and get to the fall season, the fall premiere. When you're bound by that, you're now going down the track very quickly, and that's how pilots come about, which is just let's get it all in motion because we're going to, under duress, have to pick some things, and no matter what, we're putting them on. I mean, that's part of the... In cable, it's very nice. Now,
That said, I do have a schedule now,
Yeah,
and I've regularized our schedule, which was not like that before I got there, where we have every Sunday of the year, with the exception of July 4th and Christmas, like 4 Sundays and Super Bowl.
What's the price of success?
We've got shows. So if I do have to be somewhat cognizant of what am I going to do next summer or what am I going to do next fall. But it's simple.
You asked earlier about the buying environment too. Pilot. I think it's great to have a couple of things percolating and working on them and fine tuning. But pilots also have become a defensive play in a super competitive market, and development deals have become a defensive play.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever make that, but I don't want anyone else to.
Right.
So that's why I think some of this has gotten so.
Look, it's somewhat of a hedge. I mean, you're betting on talent. You believe in talent. You have to. I mean, it's the magic and the underpinnings of the entire business. But it is a hedge. You can't just go in with series. If you go in with serious commitments with everything, even the most talented people, sometimes, quite often, it is a business of failure. Get off track. And I'm not being glib or shitty about it, but you're gonna find that some point where you're like, hey, I bet on some amazing people, and what the hell just fucking happened? And
I remind people about Ishtar all the time.
And you get on that run, and sometimes you just feel like, what is, and that's just as you get a hot hand, you get on a cold run where just. And that led to the pilot because it becomes a hedge. At least but it's also a false indicator because we look at this one frame and start trying to project 5 years.
I'll give you another example though. Sons of Anarchy, which is the biggest show we've ever had, we reshot most of that pilot, 60% of that pilot. It had a different lead. It had a different lead actor in the character of Clay Morrow, and I can say with conviction the show wouldn't have worked. So if we had put it on the air with that lead, it would have failed. The ability to go reshoot it and recast that lead led to a series that'll have.
That's what I hate about the cycle of I'm sitting on Sons of Anarchy and it comes in the last week of April and I have 1 week to screen it and a week to cut a trailer and go sell it. That show's dead in the water, and that means a great show would have never come to pass. But I have a hard time convincing the community that somehow it's in their best interest to get off that. But we're getting there.
And we get to tinker, and we let the creators tinker with the show, but not after the first air date, or not after the first pilot date, but after the show's fully delivered. We've gone back and touched early episodes, and made some pretty significant changes.
Talented people with maneuverability will get there. Yeah. I mean, and that is, if we're worth our salt at all in the creative process, is to come in and say, listen, we're behind it. I mean, that's where I give John a ton of credit. He said, we're making this, we're with you, but we have got to go deep, and I'm not letting up on it. And Kurt Sutter did it, and the rest is history. And I love that. I mean, if you have that ability to maneuver, it's not always going to work, but that's where that should be the interplay.
You mentioned agents. What's the thing that they do that they
their jobs.
Sure. The thing that doesn't help their clients and in some cases make it worse in your experience?
The worst moves agents make.
Look, I say that a lot of them are actually really good at their jobs, and it's not easy because ultimately they have to trade between a financial offer over here and a sense of long-term value over here, and it's not always easy if you have offers from multiple different places. But the truth of the matter is that I think sometimes agents take the short term. Essentially, they take whatever's right there in front of them, as opposed to making sure that the content is in the right place to last in the long run. And the truth of the matter is, nothing other than a long-running profitable series is a satisfying outcome for anyone, right? The only satisfying outcome is David makes the pilot, puts it on the air, keeps it on the air for 7 years. Everybody gets a lot of money, everybody gets a lot of awards and prestige. Anything less than that on any of our services is ultimately failure. And so I'm not saying that it's easy because I've been a seller. I think a lot of us have been sellers. It's not easy to always pick the right place, but sometimes projects end up at the wrong place.
It's always, the only time when agents make mistake is short term versus long term. I've dealt with some talent without agents, and that makes me really miss agents. And that can be a real challenge. But
so, like on True Detective, they took the money.
No, I don't.
Well,
I'm not saying
you
necessarily.
can't really argue that they took a bad situation.
Yeah, it was a
they have a series order. They're going to make it. HBO will spend the money. I can't really, in any fundamental way. I just would have loved it more. I would have given them more love, but no, I can't really argue with that one. But people are pretty smart. The one thing I think about this business is it's a meritocracy, and the agents who get to the top of the business get there for a reason, because they're pretty smart strategists. And in TV is a well-developed business, and the people at the top, particularly in the TV business, they pay attention to the right things. Where am I going to get a show that's going to run? I don't know, but in my sense is there's a little bit more bullshit involved on the feature side sometimes, and you can't. TV is ultimately not a business of bullshit, and I appreciate that of it.
What's the biggest misconception about your networks?
Well, people see FX as a male network, and we're about to put American Horror Story Coven on the air, and it'll be a dominant show with young women, as was Nip Tuck. And if you look at the actual viewing balance of the network, it's about 50-50 male-female. And I think that's partially because the broadcast networks serve women so well, and I think actually HBO and Showtime serve women really well. But that's been a really interesting and challenging thing to deal with. I mean, and we've won more awards for female actors and put more female anti-heroes on the air, all the way back to CCH Pounder on The Shield, which he developed, but through Damages and Jessica Lange and Margot Martindale, and it just goes on and on and on. Minnie Driver, but it's just really interesting. We've had difficulty shifting that perception.
What about you guys?
I don't like being. I mean, I feel like it's all changing in the right direction, but the big effort for me has been to change from that sort of we're the plucky number two, and which I loathe.
Plucky that you don't like in there?
I don't like either side of it. I don't like the number two part of it. I don't like the plucky part of it.
I would never describe you as plucky. I would be way down.
And I feel like that's already that perception is changing. But we grew up in the shadow of HBO, and so that's that's changed, but I still have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder about that. And a lot of it is changing, again, internal culture that like, no, we're playing the game to win. We're not do anything. But so it's not really a beef anymore. It was a couple years ago, that was a beef of mine. And more internally that like, look how well we did. You know, it's like, no, we have more shows on the air. We have more shows working on the air, and it's, you know, we're going to continue to pour it on.
I think most of the conceptions about Netflix are different for everybody, almost by design, because we actually build our network to be what people want. It's very personalized. So for people who really love, some people really love Netflix just for the kids programming. That's all they value it for, and it's great. We love that, and the same thing with the original shows and with dramas or anime, whatever it is, that thing that you love Netflix for. For those people, that's what they think of. That's how they think of Netflix. So it's really difficult for us to characterize any of those as misconceptions because they're kind of desired outcomes.
Industry misconceptions.
Industry is
in terms of original programming, when people sort of come to pitch you, perhaps. What they think about you and what you wish they actually thought about you.
People think that we're just going to do everything. So because we've done a couple of things well, people want to bring you any kind of show. And this is where agents can really do well, is to really know you and know me and know you and filter the marketplace. And for, but people think, oh, eventually they're going to do this because everyone else does it. They're going to do reality shows. Of course they're going to do reality shows. Or we're going to do competition shows. And we're not really driving for any of those things.
All right, final question we're going to do, which is, and I think you already answered it with your Homeland earlier, but the program you'd poach from somebody else at this table. Poached? Take, if you'd like on your air, I guess, as an original in your case.
Oh, that you would poach?
Yeah.
That you wish was your original.
Oh, okay.
Are you going to stick with your Homeland?
Yeah, I mean, I'd poach a number of shows. But
I take them all.
I take one from. Can I have one from
The one thing there's a little sampler I'd go for. The one thing I'd back up because I didn't get to answer, and I just want to get it out there, is the one thing we're fighting at Fox is a relatively new phenomenon. Is Fox was the challenger and Fox was cable before there was cable. So there was always that, well, you had to take that edgy project to Fox. And I'm fighting right now getting lumped in with broadcast. Oh, that's just, that's not a broadcast show. And, we still want to maintain that attitude and Fox positioning, which I think we're getting. But I've had to claw a lot of things back from the universe because that's a cable project.
I know what I would take. I would take some comedy from John. I might take, if I could take, I would take Louis, and I might even take The League. It probably wouldn't do great, but I happen to love the show. But I'm trying to shift a little bit what we're doing in comedy, and Louis would be a fantastic starter.
Yeah.
What would you take?
I'd take both Homeland and House of Cards. I can't pick one, but they're both terrific. I watch them both, and I guess look, I think one larger misconception, because obviously we're competitive people, and there are many competitive people that aren't at this table, extremely competitive people, and there is friction in the system. But I think one thing David said a lot that I really respect and agree with is that when one of us thrives, all of us thrive. Like it does bounce back and forth in terms of who's got the hot hand from time to time, but the reality is everybody has a measure of success simultaneously. Everybody's pretty good at their jobs, and there's room for everyone to be successful. And it's not really, no one, I don't think anybody is going to achieve a dominant position, right? I just think that's impossible in the ecosystem. There's just too many people good at their jobs, and there's too much success. And that's what's ultimately great for the consumer and great for the talent, because ultimately we're all challenged. I'm acutely aware of what everyone at this table and people not at this table are doing. I watch these shows. I want to make shows as good as any show anybody else is making. And so, it's sort of like, say, competitive tennis. When there's 3, 4, 5 really good people, everybody's game raises. And I think that's what's going on right now.
Floyd Mayweather right now. He's so dominant, and to go down, Sugar Ray Leonard had Duran and Hearns, and Muhammad Ali had Joe Frazier, and it does, you can't have a premium, you can't have the golden age of television with 1 or 2 guys doing good stuff.
But something I would point out on that is there's an interesting bifurcation going on right now, which is the vibrancy of working in television from a creative opportunity to have your show land on the correct service where it can survive and thrive and grow is incredible. And that you can feel it in the business, you can feel it in the town artistically. It's reached a new height. The consumer love affair with the content is, 5 years ago there were people on panels talking about,
the critical love affair.
It's going to go away. And that's an incredible thing. The other side of it, though, the distribution, that we're trying to rewire the system that is a very well-established system and has a lot of money involved, that is a fairly chaotic and anxiety-provoking situation. That's where some of the tensions lie at this table, and that's two separate things. Advertisers have a lot of underlying anxiety. We have underlying anxiety. The consumer wants the product. They say, we're in, it's never been better. Not sure how they can get it, not sure how much they should be paying. How do we create a cleaner system there? Those are the two interesting things that make our dive on any given day maddening or incredibly exciting.
I think that's a great place to end.
Okay, I didn't get the answer.
Oh, you're right. What's your original?
No question, Louis. No
Louis.
question, Louis. And no question, Family Guy.
right. Those would be two good pairing.
And Weeds, and I just think, and all those are on Netflix anyways.
Unbranded on Netflix. See them on Netflix.
When he went to Weeds, I knew that he was.